The Forged Signature, A Sister's Betrayal. Chapter 1, The Inherited Silence. May 2025. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon, a crisp, impersonal voice on the other end, shattering the quiet hum of my New York City apartment. My parents, gone, both of them, a quiet, peaceful passing together in their sleep, in their old Victorian home in Saratoga Springs, New York. The words landed like a heavy stone in my gut. I am Lisa, 52 years old, an art teacher by profession, an artist at heart. My life in the city was filled with the vibrant chaos of canvases, students, and the relentless pulse of urban life. Saratoga Springs, with its tranquil charm and echoes of a bygone era, was a place I visited, but no longer truly lived. Now it called me back, not for a holiday, but for a final farewell. Grief is a strange beast. It claws at you, insidious and relentless. But for me, the immediate shock was tinged with a familiar, complex emotion, the impending encounter with my younger sister, Jenna. Jenna, 50, successful, charismatic, and always in control. Our relationship had always been a delicate dance of love, unspoken resentment, and a constant underlying tension. She was the star, the confident one. I was the quieter, more observant sister, often content in my own world, yet perpetually aware of her imposing presence. The drive upstate was a blur, the familiar landscape of rolling hills, blossoming dogwoods, and the distant, majestic Adirondacks offered little comfort. Saratoga Springs itself, usually bustling with tourists drawn to its famed mineral springs and the historic racetrack, felt muted, hushed. The air, crisp and clear, carried the faint scent of pine and something else, the sharp, metallic tang of loss. My parents' house. It stood on a quiet, tree-lined street, a grand, rambling Victorian with turrets and gables that had witnessed generations of our family's joys and sorrows. Its porch light, a familiar beacon, still burned, casting a soft glow against the encroaching twilight. But this time, it felt hollow. The warmth, the life that had always emanated from within its walls was extinguished. The silence was deafening. Jenna was already there, of course. She greeted me at the door, her expression composed, almost serene. Her grief, if she felt it deeply, was well contained. "Lisa," she said, her voice smooth, her arms briefly encircling me in a perfunctory hug. "I'm glad you're here. There's so much to do." She was already in charge, as always. Organizing, directing. Her efficiency was both impressive and at times infuriating. The next few days were a somber haze of funeral arrangements, condolences from distant relatives, and the quiet ritual of sorting through a lifetime of memories. Each object, each photograph, was a tiny shard of the past, triggering a cascade of emotions. My parents, gone. The reality was slowly, painfully setting in. Then came the meeting that would shatter everything. We sat in the hushed, somber office of David Albright, the family lawyer. David, a kind man in his mid-50s, had known us since we were children. He had overseen countless family matters, from my grandfather's estate to my parents' meticulously planned affairs. His office, usually a place of calm reassurance, now felt thick with an unspoken tension. The scent of old paper mingled with the faint, unsettling aroma of uncertainty. "Lisa, Jenna," David began, his voice soft, edged with genuine sorrow. "I'm truly sorry for your loss. Your parents were remarkable people. He shuffled some papers on his mahogany desk, his gaze briefly meeting mine, then Jenna's. Now, about the will. My parents had always been clear. Always. My earliest memories were peppered with their reassurances. Everything will be split evenly between you girls. The house, with its sprawling gardens and countless memories. The substantial savings they had meticulously built over decades. The valuable collection of antique furniture, precious silver, and, most notably, the collection of regional landscape paintings that had been passed down through generations. An equal division, a sacred trust. It was the bedrock of our family's understanding. David cleared his throat, a subtle hesitation in his voice. It's straightforward. A very recent amendment was made. He pushed a document across the polished surface of the table. My eyes, still blurred from unshed tears, scanned the words. The legalese swam before me, then coalesced into stark, undeniable clarity. All assets, liquid and property, bequeathed solely to Jenna Holloway. My breath hitched. The air in my lungs froze. My heart began to pound, a frantic, suffocating rhythm against my ribs. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, raw with disbelief. That's not right. They always said..." "Lisa," Jenna interjected, her voice smooth, calm, a practiced coolness that sent a shiver down my spine. Her hand rested gently on David's arm, a subtle gesture of control. Mother and father decided. They knew I could manage the estate better. "You're an artist, Lisa. You have your life in the city. You wouldn't want the burden of a large house of investments. It's practical." Her smile, perfectly composed, held a faint, almost imperceptible edge of triumph. It was a smile I had seen countless times, always preceding some subtle, advantageous maneuver on her part. "No," I cut her off, my voice gaining strength, fueled by a rising tide of fury. My gaze, sharp and unwavering, locked onto the document David had placed before me. And there it was. Below Jenna's boldly typed name, clear and undeniable, was mine. Lisa Holloway. It was a waiver, a formal declaration, stating that I, Lisa Holloway, willingly, knowingly, and irrevocably relinquished all claims to my inheritance in favor of my sister, Jenna Holloway. It was dated just 3 months prior. My heart seized. A cold, sharp dread sliced through me, colder than the grief. This was not my signature. My hand, my eye, my entire being knew it instantly. The curve of the L, the precise slant of the H, the confident flourish at the end of the Y. It was almost perfect. Almost. So meticulously crafted, so eerily similar that to a casual observer, it would be indistinguishable from my own. But it wasn't mine. It was a forgery, a meticulous, cruel, and deeply personal forgery. I looked at Jenna. Her face was impassive, unreadable. Her eyes, however, held a flicker of something, a spark of triumph, a flash of cold defiance, or was it just my imagination, fueled by suspicion? The betrayal was a physical blow, worse than the raw ache of grief. It was an assault on my identity, on my family, on everything I thought I knew. My sister, my own flesh and blood. She had done this, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that she would stop at nothing to get away with it. The fight for justice, for truth, had just begun. And it wouldn't be just about money. It would be about everything. It would be about setting a lifetime of imbalances right. Chapter 2. Echoes of Deception. The air in David's office crackled with unspoken accusations, thick and suffocating. My outrage, still raw and unvarnished, clashed violently with Jenna's cool composure. I snatched the document, my fingers trembling as I traced the precise yet alien curves of the forged signature. My signature, so eerily similar, yet so profoundly wrong. "This isn't my signature," I stated again, my voice shaking with a potent cocktail of disbelief and unbridled fury. I looked from the lawyer to my sister, then back to the paper. "David, you know my signature. You've seen it countless times on legal documents, on birthday cards to your own children from me. Look at it. This is a fake, a forgery." Jenna scoffed, a brittle, dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "Lisa, don't be ridiculous. You signed it. You were there, remember? Mother and father wanted to simplify things. You agreed to let me handle everything. You're just upset, grieving. You're not thinking clearly." Her tone was saccharine, laced with a pity that felt like a deliberate insult. David, the family lawyer, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His gaze flickered between us, a silent plea for calm. "Lisa," he said, his voice hesitant, "it was notarized, a legal document. Your signature was witnessed by a notary public. Unless you can definitively prove otherwise, it's legally binding. This is a very serious accusation, Lisa. A challenge like this." He trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the air. He was a kind man, but he was bound by the cold, unforgiving strictures of the law. "Prove otherwise?" I retorted, my voice rising, my hands clenching into fists. "This is my proof. This isn't my handwriting. And my parents would never do this. They promised me half, always, since we were children. They were fair people." Jenna laughed again, a sharper, more cynical sound this time. "Oh, Lisa, always the dramatist. They probably just realized I was more responsible, more capable of managing their affairs. You always lived in your artistic bubble, didn't you? Head in the clouds. They were being practical, Lisa. It's what adults do. Practical." That was Jenna's go-to word for cold, calculated self-interest, for actions that benefited her at others' expense. My blood boiled. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance of her denial. I felt completely isolated. My parents were gone, unable to speak for themselves, their voices silenced forever. David, though sympathetic to my distress, was bound by legalities and could not act on my emotional pleas alone. It was just me against Jenna, a master manipulator who could twist any situation, any truth, to her advantage, leaving me feeling like the irrational, emotional one. I left David's office in a daze, the proof of my disinheritance, that damning document clutched so tightly in my hand that my knuckles ached. The quiet streets of Saratoga Springs, usually a source of comfort, now felt oppressive, suffocating. I drove back to my parents' house, the place that was no longer half mine, its beauty now tainted by the ugliness of betrayal. I spent the next few days in a relentless, almost obsessive pursuit of evidence. I began by collecting every piece of paper I could find with my authentic signature and handwriting. Old letters to my parents, tucked away in my childhood desk, faded school notebooks from high school, filled with doodles and careful script, bank checks from my joint account with my mother from years ago, my old art journals filled with sketches, class notes, and heartfelt reflections, each page bearing the indelible mark of my hand. I spread them all out on the vast, polished surface of the dining room table, a battlefield of memories. I compared them meticulously, line by painstaking line, with the forged signature on the will. To the untrained eye, the similarities were uncanny, but to me they were glaring. The subtle differences, the the barely perceptible variations, the minute tremble in the initial downstroke of my L in Lisa, the way my hand naturally flowed into the loop of the Y in Holloway. The signature on the will was too perfect, too steady. It lacked the innate, almost unconscious rhythm of my own script, the tiny imperfections that made it uniquely mine. It was a precise imitation, but an imitation nonetheless. Then a vivid memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. A childhood memory. Jenna, always so clever, so quick-witted, and sometimes so mischievous. We were teenagers, maybe 15 or 16. She wanted to skip a particularly dreaded math test. She'd forged a note from my mother, excusing her absence due to a sudden family emergency. She'd shown it to me laughing, her eyes sparkling with a mix of mischief and pride. "Look, Lisa, it's perfect. Mrs. Peterson will never know." You can't even tell. She'd mimicked my mother's elegant flowing script with frightening accuracy. And then, another memory. A playful game we used to play in rainy afternoons, huddled over the kitchen table, copying each other's handwriting. "Let's write a note like Lisa," she'd say, mimicking my deliberate, careful script, her tongue poking out in concentration. "Or I can even copy your signature," she'd brag, practicing my flowing loops with a skill that always amazed me. It was a game, a sisterly bond built on shared secrets and playful antics. Now, it felt like a chilling, sinister rehearsal for a calculated betrayal. A lifetime of quiet practice, honed for this very moment. My sister, my own flesh and blood. This wasn't just about money. This was about a lifetime of competitive resentment, of unspoken jealousy, culminating in a cruel, deliberate act of theft. It was about her need to dominate, to control, to claim what she believed was rightfully hers, even if it meant destroying everything in her path. I needed an expert, someone who could officially, legally, and irrefutably prove the forgery. And a name, clear and unwavering, came to mind. Marion. Marion Davies, my old art teacher from high school. She was more than a teacher. She was a mentor, a confidant, a woman who had seen the world through an artist's meticulous eye. After retiring from teaching, she had opened a successful art gallery in a nearby town, the Artisan's Loft, and I knew she had a keen eye for detail and had even consulted on authenticity cases for collectors, determining genuine masterpieces from clever fakes. If anyone could help me, it was Marion. It was a long shot, a desperate hope, but I was beyond desperation. The fight for my parents' legacy, for their true wishes, for my own dignity and integrity, was far from over. It had only just begun. Chapter 3: The Unveiling Hand. The drive to the Artisan's Loft was a quiet meditation, my mind replaying every conversation, every subtle glance, every memory that now seemed fraught with hidden meaning. Marion Davies Gallery, nestled in a quaint, historic building just outside Saratoga Springs, was a haven of quiet beauty, filled with the scent of canvas, fresh paint, and the faint, comforting aroma of old wood. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating vibrant paintings and delicate sculptures. Marion herself, now in her early 70s, still possessed the same keen, intelligent eyes and sharp intellect that had once inspired me in art class. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her hands, though lined with age, moved with a surprising dexterity as she arranged a collection of pottery. She greeted me with a warm, genuine hug, her expression softening as I explained my parents' passing. She offered her condolences, her words gentle and sincere. Then I laid out my case. The forged will, the damning signature, and my meticulously collected samples of authentic handwriting. I explained everything, haltingly at first, then with increasing urgency. The childhood memories of Jenna's uncanny ability to mimic handwriting, the casual games that now seemed like sinister practice, the growing, icy suspicion that had festered for years. Marion listened patiently, her brow furrowed in concentration. She picked up the disputed document, holding it up to the light, her artist's eye scrutinizing every curve, every stroke. Then she took out a small, specialized magnifying glass, its lens cold and precise, her gaze unblinking as she compared the signatures, line by painstaking line. She spent over an hour, moving between the documents, sometimes humming softly to herself, sometimes making tiny notes on a clean pad. The silence in the gallery was broken only by the soft rustle of paper and the distant murmur of traffic outside. "This is fascinating, Lisa," she finally said, her voice thoughtful, almost academic, but with an undercurrent of concern. She put down the magnifying glass, leaning back in her chair. "The consistency of pressure, the fluidness. It's a remarkably good forgery, high quality, very difficult to detect without careful analysis." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding, a knowing sadness. "But it's not yours, not truly, not the innate rhythm of your hand." My breath hitched. Relief, profound and dizzying, washed over me, so overwhelming it almost brought me to my knees. She saw it. Someone else, an expert, saw it. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't crazy. "Look here," Marion explained, her slender finger pointing to the specific details under the magnifying glass. "The initial downstroke on your L in Lisa has a very slight tremor, almost imperceptible, a natural hesitation, perhaps from how you hold your pen, a tiny, unique habit. The forged signature lacks it. It's too perfect, too smooth, and your O in Holloway always has a tiny, almost imperceptible break at the top where your pen lifts for a fraction of a second, even subconsciously. This one is completely closed, a perfect circle. Small details, yes, minuscule even, but they are unique to your hand, like a fingerprint, an almost invisible signature of self." She handed me a formal document. "I can provide you with an expert opinion, a detailed forensic analysis outlining every discrepancy, every telltale sign of the forgery. This would stand up in court, Lisa. It's conclusive." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring Marion's kind face. "Thank you, Marion. Thank you. I don't know what I would do without you." "Lisa," Marion added, her voice softer, her gaze empathetic, "this level of forgery, especially with such intimate knowledge of your hand, it speaks of someone who knows you very, very well. Someone who has studied your handwriting for a long time. Someone with a deep emotional connection to you. Or a deep emotional animosity. It's not just a copy, it's a performance. An artist copying another artist." Her words sent a fresh, icy chill down my spine. Jenna. It had to be Jenna. Marion's assessment, so precise and dispassionate, confirmed my darkest, most painful suspicions. It wasn't just a random act of greed. It was a calculated act of betrayal, fueled by a lifetime of hidden resentments. As I left Marion's gallery, clutching the expert report, a new wave of memories, darker and more disturbing, crashed over me. Jenna's history of deception, now seen through a new, chilling lens, the little white lies she told as a child, growing into bigger ones as she aged, the way she always seemed to get away with everything, charming her way out of trouble, leaving others to face the consequences. Then, a specific memory, sharp and vivid, cut through the haze. My mother's sapphire brooch, a treasured heirloom, passed down through generations of Holloway women. It had gone missing years ago. My parents had been heartbroken, suspecting the cleaning lady. She was dismissed, but the brooch was never found. My mother mourned its loss for years. I suddenly, vividly, recalled Jenna being oddly quiet that day. The brooch disappeared. Distant, preoccupied. Could it be? Was it possible? Could she have? The thought was sickening. Was this forged will just the latest, grandest act in a lifetime of calculated manipulations, a testament to her lifelong pattern of taking what she wanted, regardless of the cost? Armed with Marion's expert opinion, with the scientific certainty of the forgery, I returned to David's office. He read the report, his expression shifting from initial skepticism to professional shock, then to a look of grim determination. "This is compelling, Lisa," he admitted, his voice now serious, devoid of any doubt. "Very compelling. A notary public's witness means something, yes, but an expert forensic analysis of handwriting can certainly challenge it, especially given the clear emotional and family context. This changes everything. We can initiate a formal challenge to the will. We can take this to court." A surge of grim, resolute determination settled in me. Court. A public battle. A family torn asunder, its secrets laid bare for the world to see. It would be painful, ugly, emotionally draining. But it was necessary. For my parents' true wishes, for their legacy, for my own integrity, for justice. Jenna had chosen this path of deception, and I, Lisa, the quiet sister, would meet her on it. The fight for the truth, for the very essence of our family's honor, had just begun, and I would not yield. Chapter 4: Whispers from the Grave. The weeks leading up to the court date were a relentless maelstrom of legal preparations, depositions, and a cold, palpable silence between Jenna and me. She maintained her composure with unnerving perfection, her denials smooth and unwavering, a master performance of injured innocence. "Lisa is unstable," she told David during one tense mediation attempt, her voice laced with mock concern. "She's grieving, yes, but she's always been prone to hysterics, to jealousy. She's trying to defame me, to steal what's rightfully mine." Her words, meant to undermine my credibility, to paint me as the irrational sister, only hardened my resolve. I knew her game, and I was no longer playing by her rules. David, my lawyer, now fully committed to my cause, advised me to look for anything else. Any other document, any old letter, note, or personal item that might contain an unequivocal statement of my parents' true intentions regarding their estate. Sometimes, he mused, people leave little breadcrumbs, a personal note, a hidden message, something that confirms their final wishes beyond the formal documents. I returned to the house, no longer with dread, but with a fierce, almost desperate determination. I began a systematic search, room by room, drawer by drawer, box by box. I combed through their belongings, sifting through a lifetime of accumulated memories. Dusty photo albums filled with fading snapshots of holidays and milestones. Bundles of old, tied-up letters exchanged between them from distant trips. Forgotten trinkets, sentimental mementos, every item a silent echo of their lives. I was looking for their voices, their truth, a direct personal confirmation that could cut through Jenna's lies. And then I found them, hidden in a locked cedar chest in the deepest corner of my mother's closet, beneath layers of meticulously folded antique linen and sachets of dried lavender. 2 small, leather-bound diaries. My mother's, with its elegant, cursive script, and my father's, its cover worn, its entries more concise, but equally telling. Both were dated from the last decade of their lives, spanning the years when the amended will would have been created. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm as I picked them up, the leather cool and smooth beneath my fingertips. This was it. Their private thoughts, their unspoken truths. I opened my mother's diary first. Her familiar, flowing script filled the pages with daily observations, reflections on her garden, quiet worries about her health, and occasional glimpses into her profound love for my father. And then a series of entries that made my breath catch in my throat, words that confirmed my deepest unspoken fears, yet offered a profound, aching solace. An entry from 5 years ago read, "Richard, my father, is concerned about Jenna, her ambition, her drive. It can be a wonderful quality in business, but sometimes her selective truthfulness. She has such a sharp mind, but sometimes I worry she uses it for her own gain, without true consideration for others. We must be firm with her, set boundaries, but it is so hard. She is our daughter, after all." Another entry, more recent, written just a year before their passing. "Lisa seems distant. She doesn't visit as often, stays immersed in her city life. I worry about the growing rift between the girls. Jenna always tries to dominate, to take center stage. Perhaps we indulged her too much when she was young, fostered her need to be the best. We must tell Lisa how much we love her, that she is just as cherished, just as valued. Her quiet strength is her greatest gift." And then a crucial entry, dated just months before their passing, strikingly close to the alleged signing of the forged will. "We spoke with David today, reaffirmed our will, equal shares for our 2 daughters. It is only fair. We want them both to be secure, to have a foundation to build upon. And we dream of that small cottage by the lake, just for us. A quiet retirement, a tranquil escape from the world. If we did not divide the inheritance, that dream would not be possible for us. It would take all our savings, so the division is essential. The cottage by the lake, a small, seemingly insignificant detail, but so telling. My parents had always spoken of that dream. A small, tranquil haven for their golden years. If I had truly relinquished my inheritance, their liquid assets would have been significantly reduced, making that cherished dream impossible for them. It was an irrefutable piece of circumstantial evidence, woven into the fabric of their daily thoughts. I turned to my father's diary. His entries were sparser, more concise, written in a firm, deliberate hand, but equally revealing. He wrote about his pride in my artistic endeavors, his quiet admiration for my honesty and integrity. He mentioned Jenna's business acumen, acknowledging her success, but also noting her unsettling pragmatism and her tendency to view everything through a transactional lens. And then an entry, marked with a small hand-drawn star, dated shortly before my mother's entry about the will. "I bought a small, antique wooden box today. Beautifully carved, quite exquisite. I will keep it safe, and when the time comes, I will put a final letter for the girls inside. A safeguard, a last word, just in case, a contingency, a final letter, a safeguard." My father, cautious and discerning, had sensed Jenna's tendencies. He had foreseen the possible attempt to usurp the inheritance. He had left a fail-safe, a last will not of property, but of truth. My hands trembled violently as I read. My parents, they knew. They had known about Jenna's manipulations, her subtle deceptions. They hadn't been blind. They had struggled with it, grappling with the painful reality of their own daughter's character. And in their wisdom and their enduring, unwavering love for me, they had left a silent witness, a final testament to their true wishes, a beacon of clarity in the fog of betrayal. The antique box, I remembered seeing a small, ornately carved wooden box on my father's desk in his study. I had thought it was just another trinket, a decorative piece. Now it was a beacon, a key, a message from the grave. I had to find it. The truth, in its painful, complex layers, was finally revealing itself, piece by painstaking piece. And it was more heartbreaking and more liberating than I could have imagined. The echoes of their voices, finally heard, brought a profound, overwhelming sense of peace and vindication. Chapter 5, The Unveiled Truth. The search for the antique wooden box became a desperate, almost feverish quest. I tore through my father's study, a room I had always associated with quiet contemplation and the comforting scent of leather-bound books. I systematically lifted floorboards, tapped on walls, and emptied every hidden compartment of his old roll-top desk. My heart hammered against my ribs, fueled by a potent mix of anticipation and dread. This box, this final letter, it held the key to everything. Finally, beneath a loose floorboard in a dark corner, exactly where he often hid small, precious things. My fingers brushed against cold, carved wood. I prized it open. The box, intricately carved with swirling Celtic knots, was smaller than I remembered, but felt surprisingly heavy in my hands. It was a tangible link to my father, to his careful nature, his foresight. With trembling fingers, I fumbled with the clasp. It clicked open, a small, definitive sound that echoed loudly in the silent room. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded, dark velvet, was a single, yellowed envelope. The paper was brittle with age, the edges softened by time, addressed simply, "To my daughters, Lisa and Jenna." The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's elegant, flowing script, intertwined with my father's firmer, more deliberate hand. A silent conversation between them, reaching out from beyond the grave. A final message. A last will, not of property, but of truth. I opened it. The aged paper crackled softly, a whisper from the past. My mother's familiar script began, then flowed into my father's more formal tone. Their voices merging into one heartfelt testament. "My dearest girls," it began, the words seeming to shimmer on the page. "If you are reading this, it means we are no longer with you. And it also means that, sadly, our greatest fear has come to pass. That our last will, which we meticulously prepared with David, our trusted lawyer, has been altered. That one of you has sought to gain an unfair advantage, to usurp what was intended for both." My breath hitched. They knew. They had seen it coming. "Jenna, my sweet child," the letter continued, addressing her directly, yet with a profound sadness. "Your ambition has always been a source of both pride and profound concern. We have watched your tendency to seek advantage, to manipulate situations to your favor, to obscure the truth for your own gain. It broke our hearts, child. We tried to guide you, to teach you the value of honesty and integrity, but it seems we failed. We hoped, even in our passing, that your better nature would prevail. It grieved us to see the discord between you and your sister, knowing the cause. Then it turned to me, the words a balm to my aching soul. Lisa, my gentle, honest daughter," the letter continued, radiating a warmth that filled the room. "We have watched you recede, step back, often out of a desire for peace, for harmony, and sometimes, we feared, out of a quiet pain. We knew you felt overlooked at times, overshadowed. We want you to know, unequivocally, that you were cherished, equally, always. Your quiet strength, your unwavering honesty, your deep capacity for kindness. These are your greatest gifts. You were never less. You were always enough, more than enough. The letter concluded with a plea, a final act of wisdom and love. We leave this letter as our final testament, a testament to our true desires, a testament to our unwavering love for both of you. Despite your flaws, we hope that, with this, truth will prevail, that justice will be served, and that perhaps, through understanding this painful truth, healing can begin for all of you, though we know the path will be difficult and the wounds may run deep. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the words on the page. My parents, they knew. They had seen Jenna for who she was, and they had tried, in their quiet, loving way, to protect me, to ensure justice. This letter was not just a legal document. It was their last act of unconditional love, their final embrace, speaking from beyond the grave, finally confirming my deepest suspicions and validating my lifelong feelings of being misunderstood, overlooked. It was a profound release. The court date arrived, a day shrouded in a grim, inevitable tension. The courtroom was formal, hushed, filled with the sterile air of legal proceedings. David, my lawyer, stood tall and resolute. He began by presenting Marion's expert testimony, a meticulous, dispassionate analysis detailing every minute discrepancy, every telltale sign of the forgery on the will. The visual aids, magnified projections of the signatures, left no room for doubt. Then, David presented my mother's diary entries, carefully chosen passages that illuminated their true intention for equal division of the estate, and crucially, the financial impossibility of their cherished retirement dream if I had indeed relinquished my share. The narrative of their daily lives, their hopes and concerns, spoke louder than any legal jargon. Finally, with a dramatic flourish, David presented the antique box and the letter, the last word from my parents. He read it aloud, his voice clear and resonant, filling the courtroom with their loving, sorrowful, yet resolute words. The impact was palpable. A collective gasp rippled through the spectators. Jenna's composure, her carefully constructed facade, finally cracked. Her face, usually so cool and impassive, contorted with a mixture of raw rage, desperation, and a chilling flicker of fear. She lunged forward, trying to object, her voice shrill and desperate. She tried to deny the diaries, to claim I had fabricated the letter, that the handwriting analysis was flawed, that it was all a conspiracy against her. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic analysis, the consistent, corroborating narrative in both diaries, the clear, undeniable statement in the final letter, a voice from the grave that could not be silenced. The judge, a stern, unblinking woman, listened patiently to Jenna's frantic denials, then cut her off with a decisive bang of her gavel. Her ruling was swift and unequivocal. The forged will was invalidated. The true will, stipulating equal division of the entire estate, was upheld. Justice. It was a cold, hard word, reverberating through the silent courtroom. I looked at Jenna. Her eyes, filled with fury and utter defeat, finally met mine. There was no remorse, no apology, only a bitter, venomous hatred that twisted her features. The bond of sisterhood, once strained and fragile, now shattered beyond any hope of repair. It was a victory, yes, but it was a hollow one. I felt no triumph, only a profound, aching sadness. The inheritance, the money, the house, it was all secondary. What I had truly gained was clarity. and the knowledge that my parents had loved me, trusted me, and had tried, in their final act, to set things right. Their voices, once just whispers, now echoed with profound truth. Chapter 6: A Legacy Reborn. The aftermath of the trial was a strange, disorienting mix of emptiness and quiet reflection. The victory, though legally definitive, felt hollow, tinged with the irreversible loss of a sisterly bond. Jenna, consumed by her own bitterness and blinded by her shattered ambition, retreated into a furious silence, severing all ties. There was no reconciliation, no attempt at understanding, only a vast, aching void where a sister once stood. The family, as I had known it, was irrevocably broken. I returned to the house in Saratoga Springs, no longer with dread or the suffocating weight of betrayal. It now felt like a living monument to my parents' enduring love, a testament to their quiet strength and their unwavering belief in fairness. I walked through the rooms, no longer seeing them as a symbol of injustice, but as a potential canvas for a new beginning. My parents' last letter. It lay on my nightstand, the fragile paper a constant reminder of their final, loving gesture. It absolved me of any doubt, any lingering insecurity. It spoke to their profound wisdom, their quiet understanding of Jenna's deep-seated flaws, and their unwavering support for me, their gentle, honest daughter. It was a deep, profound healing for a wound I hadn't even realized was festering for decades. The feeling of being somehow less, somehow unloved. Perpetually eclipsed in Jenna's shadow, that shadow had finally lifted. I was free, free from her manipulation, free from the need for her approval. Free to embrace my own path, my own worth, reaffirmed by the voices of my parents from beyond the grave. Now, with my half of the inheritance secured, a new purpose began to bloom in my mind, a seed planted by Marion's words, nurtured by my parents' legacy. I couldn't simply sell the house. It held too much history, too many memories, too much love, too much truth. It needed to be more than just property. It needed a soul, a purpose that reflected the values my parents had cherished. I decided to transform it, to honor my parents' spirit, their quiet passion for art, and their profound love for me. I would use my share of the inheritance and the house itself to open an art school, a community art center housed in the very ruins where I had first learned to draw, where my parents had patiently encouraged my early sketches, where creativity had always been celebrated. It would be a place where young artists and aspiring artists of all ages could find their voice. A place of honesty, of authenticity, where talent was nurtured, where integrity was valued above all else, where no one would feel overlooked or less than or overshadowed. It would be a space where truth and creativity could flourish, free from the shadows of deception that had once darkened its very foundations. I named it the Holloway Legacy Art Center, a legacy not just of financial wealth, but of enduring values, of honesty, of the profound power of family love, even when tested by the darkest of betrayals. It would be a living, breathing testament to the parents I had loved and to the sister I had lost. I started with the renovations, carefully restoring the old house, preserving its historic charm while adapting it for its new purpose. The grand living room, once a formal space, became a vibrant exhibition hall. The sun-drenched dining room, a pottery studio. The sprawling gardens, a place for outdoor sketching and quiet reflection. David, the family lawyer, his respect for me deepened by the ordeal, became an invaluable advisor on the center's board. Marion, my old art teacher, the woman whose expert eye had uncovered the truth, eagerly offered to teach workshops and curate exhibitions, her passion for art reignited. The community, always appreciative of its heritage, embraced the idea with open arms, thrilled to see the old Holloway house given a new life, a new meaning. Life moved forward, imbued with a newfound sense of purpose and peace. The scar of Jenna's betrayal remained, a quiet, almost imperceptible reminder of the fragility of trust, of the dark currents that can flow within families. But it no longer defined me. It no longer held me captive. I was free, free from the shadow of her manipulation, free to embrace my own path, my own worth, reaffirmed by the undeniable voices of my parents from beyond the grave. The smell of fresh paint and new wood now filled the air of the old house, mingling with the faint, lingering scent of my parents' memories. Laughter began to echo through its halls again, the joyous sound of children discovering their own creativity, their own unique voices. My parents' quiet dream of a tranquil retirement by the lake hadn't materialized in the way they had envisioned. But their legacy lived on in a different, perhaps even more profound form. A vibrant, honest space built on love and truth, where the spirit of art and the enduring spirit of the Holloways would continue to inspire for generations to come. And I, Lisa, the quiet sister, had finally found my own voice and my own powerful purpose, blooming in the light of the truth.